So we're going to speak about the future of money. So before such, let's start with the Bank of Portugal and learn on how the regulator's supervisor is going to leading with digital currency and also with the connected financial services, new tasks, new realities. And our next guest is Elder Gudalino. Welcome to this conference. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to participate at the APDC Congress. I'd like to greet Rogério Carapuço, Preciso Vieira, responsible for this Congress. The topic I was asked to address is on the financial services, in particular digital currency, what is being done at that level and regulating digital currency. Indeed, we are experiencing a transformation period of uncertainty in relation to what will be the future, what will be the near future of digital currency evolution, functions of the monetary entities, a particular emission of money, currency, and ensuring payment system. I'm going to briefly mention the context that we live in and what is being developed. Then I will focus in particular on the Euro Digital project developed by the European Central Bank, by several central banks in the Eurozone, and that are to create a new method of payment equivalent to banknotes issued by central banks. And then I'll also speak about another specific dimension, which is on the regulation of the crypto asset market. We know that there are private cryptocurrency emerging. So what is important is to understand how regulation monetary authorities propose to approach regulation. So it's important to explain what is technology for the financial sector. It's based on three specific dimensions. Technology is an enabler. It's a tool, a dimension which is fundamental in organization transformation to generate productivity for organizations, support their digital transformation, and also for the financial sector today, it's distribution form of services. Today, technology via channels access enables that financial services are democratized, reaching everyone. And there's another dimension, technology as a financial product and service. And more technology is transforming itself into a product that operators, financial service providers in their dimension assume gaining market differentiation. Today, technology assumes as being an enabler, more and more as an enabler, as a competitive dimension for organizations, for the financial sector. So technology's role has been changing over time, but these three main functions are maintained, emphasizing technology as a financial product. More and more financial institutions are different in the way they provide technological solutions for financial services. This dimension is felt in the payment method system. As we've mentioned, the ecosystem is following a very speedy process. Consumers prefer methods of payments that are quick, convenient, with full availability. There's a significant decline, accelerated in cash. Also, new technologies are penetrating methods of payment, and also there are new players. This has been mentioned, the fintech role in this change of the payment ecosystem, and big tech also today in some cases are playing a relevant role. This is the ecosystem in terms of technology, new players, new solutions. Consumer preferences is deeply changing, and this is where there are new private payment solutions like crypto assets, virtual assets, and also the digital currency of the central bank. We need to understand its reality, the reality of the financial sector, looking at these different solutions. And this leads to the fact that central banks, monetary authorities have to rethink their role, both in terms of providing methods of payments as also regulators of new operators' activity. And this is the challenge that lies ahead for central bank. Crypto assets and stable coins, which are virtual assets, have been more and more integrating payment systems are already offered by larger operators. Service providers like PayPal, MasterCard, Visa are making available these services. There are more shopkeepers accepting crypto assets despite some hardships, and larger banks in the world are also developing projects investing in that area.
As Big Tech também.
Big techs, as was mentioned, as I've just said, have more and more want to open offers in a global chain that is of offering private currency. So we face different realities, leading to the fact that central bank monetary authorities look at that principle. Businesses, same risk, same rules. We need to regulate, and we need to accompany the private digital currency aspects. So central banks have two specific actions in their strategy for the next years to come. On one hand, to develop projects and to regulate crypto assets. And also, it's important to give you a quick explanation of crypto assets, stable coins. We're speaking about digital currency. And also, we're speaking of different realities. Stable coins are typically private currency issued by private entities with a value reserve which is related. There is a price stability. Facebook issuing pound, and it's in that dimension. Speaking about a stable coin, it's a currency, a digital currency used for payment as a value reserve, but no value bearer. It has a basket of assets bearing that value. Crypto assets, no value associated, connected. We're speaking about then we're speaking about Bitcoin. Central digital currency, which is equivalent to a banknote. It's a liability. Central banks have the capacity to issue monetary-wide. They're creating a liability on banknote users, and the intermediaries are financial institutions. So three realities: digital currency from the central bank, issued by the central bank, equivalent to banknotes. Stable coin is a private currency issued by entities which are more concerned with guaranteeing the value of those coins, and in that situation can be equivalent to a bank deposit. I can pay with that stable coin, but without a volatility risk to that of the crypto assets, Bitcoins. We're speaking about three different realities that might seem similar, but have a different dimension.
Os projetos de moeda digital do Banco Central.
So digital currency from the central bank, with the decline in using cash, and with the need to maintain the central bank's role as anchor of the payment system, and before very quick surge of private digital currency, and also as a result of some monetary authorities and other corners of the world developing projects in a very accelerated way to gain space in the international payment system, led to the fact that most monetary entities in these geographies, more important geographies, to develop projects on banks, develop bank central digital currency. They are developing these currencies. Half of the central banks are already developed concrete experiments, and 2/3 consider it likely to issue a retail a currency in digital currency in the mid and long term. The European Central Bank created a project in 2020 to develop the digital currency by the central bank. It's 3.5 years old since it's been developed. We're already at a more evolved stage. Let me just leave you with a concrete definition. It's a very simplistic definition, but I think it's easier to pass it on so that we can all understand what is the digital currency from the bank, central bank. It corresponds to opening an account at the central bank. We receive our salary is transferred, and then we use a card, other payment instruments, and we are using these instruments. The digital currency by the central bank is the equivalent of having an account at the central bank. We can have an account at the central bank with payment instruments made available by the central bank, and then we can use the equivalent to banknotes. Central banks issue banknotes. We convert our banking account. What we're transforming is our bank deposit into a physical currency, converting a bank deposit electronic currency into a physical currency of the central bank. It would be the equivalent to having digital currency by the central bank. It's the equivalent of a banknote. This is what is being developed. And so why are we developing this project? It's important to say that if the euro digital is issued, and we're convinced that it will be made available to the public in general, such as banknotes, including companies, and also to be used in retail payments. It will have similar functions as normal payment method. I can use a euro digital in any payment. I can use it. It will be made available in the Eurozone. A digital currency, a payment system which is unique. Today, we can say that we can make payments in a cross-cutting, universal way all over Europe, but with Visa and MasterCard, American brands. Can it contribute to reducing certain aspects in the banking sector? I can use the euro digital without holding a bank account, free from burdens. That is, as banknotes will have no significant cost, that is free of encumbrances and exempt of risks. If we can have a bank account, an account to pay to make, it's not subject to the guarantee fund. Once it's a riskless currency and can coexist, can be integrated with private payment solutions. What are the objectives? Why is the euro digital? Why is it important? Why is it important for Europe? First of all, to preserve the bank central's currency as an anchor of the system payment. We know that today we use payment systems that our banks provide us with, international plans. We know that there are banknotes which are the anchors. There's always a conversion of currency. I can convert all my notes, but theoretically, all money can be converted. It's to have something equivalent in a digital version. Once that we're moving towards a digital economy, to a system which tends to abandon physical dimension, the idea is to preserve euro digital, but to preserve the role of central banks in the payment system. But cash and euro digital coexist. That's the idea, because as long as the public has that need, it's not to abandon coins and notes. And the idea is that, and the second objective is not the least important, related to contributing to a strategic autonomy and Europe efficiency. And today, in another panel, we spoke of it. We don't have a European brand. We don't even have an integrated payment system. What we have in Portugal are excellent solutions, MBWay. But if we go to Spain and if we want to use MBWay to pay for a meal at a restaurant or to pay or buy something, it doesn't work. In Amsterdam, it doesn't work as well. So we have a single currency,
de pagamentos nacionais.
national payment systems which are quite developed, but we don't have a single payment which is transversal. The idea is to create the ability to develop the payment system at a European level, to maintain monetary sovereignty and to create an autonomy at that level. The idea is with the rapid decline of banknotes, with the emergence of brands like PayPal, Visa, MasterCards, that this can create indeed reliance of Europe in relation to these international brands, decreasing the strategic autonomy of payment in Europe. So the European authorities, European Central Bank, European Commission are interested in developing a single payments that can be integrated in all solutions provided by the banks. So this dimension is very important. Now, some people can ask, some people have asked, and I've participated in many debates, nobody's asking for the digital currencies by the central bank. We have the euro digital, nobody's asking. We already have euros, we have electronic solutions. Now, what is the euro digital? What will it bring about? What will be new? First of all, this project is very important for central banks, for monetary authorities, and also for the states. Important for the central bank have essential functions from implementing the monetary policy until the financial stability, good functioning of the payment system, have the capacity to maintain emission. If not, again, the monetary base will lose its relevance if the central bank cannot issue coins. And so the main reason for which central banks are developing this project because they want to preserve their role in the economic policies under their responsibility, but there are also objectives that can benefit consumers, shopkeepers, and others. That is, today I have to coexist with different methods of payments, and then I can have access to digital bills. It can streamline the users in such. The idea is that it's an alternative to notes. There are people that trust payment methods issued by the central bank, and they want to keep that possibility of using payment methods that are similar to cash. And this is an objective that can be provided to consumers. It's always, the idea is that this digital currency, as it happens with private payments, will always be available for shopkeepers. Maybe they can be the ones that will benefit more from this method of payment. Euro digital will be free of encumbrances, subject to fees
Definidas como máximo.
defined as a maximum, and will give negotiation power to when confronted to larger international brands regarding services provided. There will be a greater power to negotiate. We have that experience where there are certain locations where only cash is accepted, but if I can accept it subject to other conditions, and I can reduce the reliance on international grants.
Digamos que
And it also integrate other payment methods and to materialize other sales. For the credit institutions, the possibility is to integrate the Euro digital solution in their offers and to have a greater capacity to distribute more and better solutions to offer their clients, and also to limit costs, because this infrastructure will be supported by the central banks, will lead to lower costs. The project is at a research stage. As I've mentioned, it started in 2020. There was a pre-project, a study phase, which whose objective was to produce a report that would assess under what condition, general condition, and more specific conditions could we develop such a project in a monetary space such as a euro. It was concluded in June 2022 and was approved by the governor's session. Because of there being a business case, because it was a business case for the project, it's a stage which is very important, studying the Euro digital characteristics, what it is, how will it be made available to the to citizens in their daily life. And if we make that decision last call by the Governor Council to use the Euro digital, then we will create this situations to issue the Euro digital, and it's foreseen, as Christine Lagarde mentioned, in 5 years. She said this in 2020, pointing to 2025, 2026, the possibility of there being the conditions that Euro digital could achieve, could be part of our wallet. In China, millions of users use the Yuan digital, also used in multiple retail chains, restaurants, and so on, and which is at an advanced stage. The United States are also developing, England, Australia, New Zealand, most countries in those geographies show that there's such an impact, and they're developing that project. I'm not going to go into detail, but several decisions were made. Using Euro digital will be used in electronic trade, e-commerce, transfer, P2P, and payment to government institutions. Euro digital can be used within these reality. It will be a high level of privacy, unlike what we might think of. Some information will have to be known, but the idea is that this Euro system will have a minimum access of data to check transactions just for statistical purposes, and with some R&D ones.
o objetivo.
But the purpose is that a level of anonymity should be very close to bank bills. It can be used in offline transactions, and there will be transfer limits. We cannot transfer all our deposits in bank accounts to this type of accounts. We cannot do this migration. There's a limit to avoid the fear that this might generate a problem in the financial system and devoid it of its functions. The distribution model will be based on a commercial and functional scheme, and this will be integrated at a global level. These decisions have been taken. There are decisions to be made so that we can progress to the implementation phase. We're talking about decisions related with the role of intermediaries and what will be the role of credit institutions, the funding and defunding scheme. How can I transfer money from my traditional bank account to my digital Euro bank account? The connection model, access and limits, and the number of accounts. Can I have one, several accounts? All this is being discussed. I participate in the working group of the European Central Bank I represent Portugal. We prepare the decisions for the Council of Governors, and we are finishing the decisions on this. We hope it will be decisions made until the end of the year so that the digital euro may start. Well, I probably have already exceeded the time I was given. Let me change now and segue into the regulation of crypto assets. Here, the big novelty is that the European Commission has approved and recently published a regulation, a proposal for regulation of the European Parliament for MiCA, the Portuguese acronym. It establishes the regulatory framework for crypto assets activity, identifying the different identities, activities with specific regulation for crypto assets. What will happen is, very briefly, is that those who operate with crypto assets, those who provide platforms and services connected with the management of crypto assets will be covered by the regulation that will be transposed to the different member states. And this will be regulated and under the oversight of the central bank, the SEC in Portugal, which is CMVM, and the market will be regulated, harmonized, and this will bring forward legal certainty and support technological investments and also give stability to the financial system. This is important because, like in RGPD, this is being regulated, and most likely the US will do something similar as Europe is doing for crypto assets, and there will be security for entities investing in these areas, but also for consumers and for the financial system. In Portugal, we will start this at the level of financial supervisors regarding competences of the entities that belong to the system, the Bank of Portugal, CMVM, and to ensure that this regulation is adopted. And if we want the central bank to issue digital currency and private entities issuing private assets within a stable, harmonized framework and duly regulated and supervised. So the date of enforcement is 18 months after, 12 months after entering into force, and 18 months for the entire law package. The drafting of the law was approved in April of the current year, and it is expected to be published soon, very soon. And this will bring about certainty in the markets, and it will be beneficial. And this is what I had to share with you. Thank you.
Tivemos então
So
agora sim, tivemos então a visão do supervisor.
So we've had the perspective of the supervisor, the Bank of Portugal, that lasted the double of the time. So you gentlemen have less time, and I'll try to be as objective as possible. We've heard the perspective of the supervisor. Let's now look at the digital euro, and depending on how it is regulated. My first question, probably asked by many Portuguese and businesses, why do we need the digital euro? Is this another cryptocurrency? First, let me introduce Francisco Barbeira, responsible for IT and operations in BPI Bank. Ricardo Correia, Managing Director of Digital Currencies at R3. So, Francisco, is this yet another digital currency, or is it the currency we need right now? Thank you so much for your invitation. I believe there will be no problem because the previous presentation has been so thorough and detailed that our job was made easier. As it was clearly stated, it's not a cryptocurrency. It is a currency of the central bank with the same value of our banknotes. And as it was said, there will be a regulation that will enable the creation by banks and other entities within this regulated space of having stable coins, not central bank currency, but private currency. And the central bank has a very important premise. We are all looking at this topic from a different perspective, and it will mean a technological breakthrough. If it's not yet another cryptocurrency, is this an advantage or disadvantage? It's not one more, it's a special currency, and it's very clear. Whenever a client uses her money, banknotes and coins, money guaranteed by the central bank, and gives it to a bank, it's transforming central bank currency into private currency. So the banks receive money from the central bank, and we create the conditions for the remuneration of their deposits, and we create private currency whenever we grant loans. This is how currency is created in the economy. If there was no banknotes, coins, we wouldn't have money. So the work of banks is a fiduciary work and also to balance the system. But there are clients who prefer to hold their money in banknotes and coins. And those who prefer to do so can have that as a reserve of the central bank in a digital format. And when it becomes digital, this money can also be traded in ways that can only be done digitally. There's this advantage, but as said before, there's the crypto assets regulation that will enable banks also to play their fiduciary role with stablecoins and cryptocurrencies. So it's not one more, it's special because it's a currency with the guarantee of the central bank, as it was well explained, and it also has this role of speeding up interoperability and also to strengthen the European space of payments. Ricard, will this entail big technological changes or not? The idea of trading this digital euro and making it accessible to all, as Christine Lagarde said, which is to make it accessible. First of all, thank you so much for the invitation. I was born in Mozambique. When I was 2 years old, I left Mozambique, and I speak English better, so I'll switch into English.
But certainly it's going to be easier
That's
for
okay.
me to
Go
answer
on.
the question, although I do understand.
Can I keep the
So
Portuguese or should I?
You can mix it up. It's
Whatever.
fine. It's
Okay.
fine. Blockchains and central Portuguese and English. So the interoperability of language.
I think
So
that you enter in this kind of area in Zimbabwe. I'm all right? I'm correct?
yes, I grew up in Zimbabwe. I started programming at 13, and I started, I think it was illegal, I think, doing foreign currencies at 16.
Let's forget about that.
on a street corner.
Maybe.
But it was fine. So I got
the
into
changing that
the
this
changing
currency.
environments. But fintech, I've been with since I was 13 to 16. So it's been a fascinating kind of ride so far, understanding how money works. And, you know, we heard earlier from the central bank, very clean explanation of what's going on. Your question around the technology impact. So the money itself is interesting, and certainly there's technological innovation in the money. The ECB, is creating a central-based CBDC, not a distributed-based CBDC. So in that sense, it's not a blockchain or a distributed ledger. It's going to be centrally managed, but it will have some properties that are going to be interesting. For example, the money will be smart, whatever that means to people. And I know that programmability has both a kind of a positive and a negative connotation. But programmable money is kind of interesting, and we should explore that. And I think that that's certainly a technological advance. I think the way that the money will be used will have a much bigger technical impact. So for example, we hear a lot of DeFi, which is very interesting, distributed finance versus TradFi, traditional finance. So the question is, if the central banks don't act on what's going on with the innovation on money, might they be left out of the monetary system so they won't be able to have the monetary levers that they need for stability?
So do you think they are being forced to have
in a way,
of euro or dollar or whatever it is?
Yeah, sometimes you look at the motivation of these organizations and you'd say that there's two motivations. There's FOMO, the fear of missing out on something, and then there's FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And so you look at both of those, and at the moment it feels to me that it's more of a FUD motivation than a FOMO motivation, like the fear and the uncertainty and the doubt of what this landscape might look like in the next 5 to 10 years, and then the central bank maybe becoming redundant.
And do you think that, I quote Christine Lagarde, that this currency is going to be better to be available for everybody? We are thinking about millions of people, and some of them, unfortunately, don't have something smart to have a smart currency. Is that an issue?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So growing up in Zimbabwe, the big issue is just coverage. So you might have the device, but you don't have the coverage. So you start with a device. CBDCs can be issued on a card. So it doesn't need the device per se. It can be a smart card, like a credit card, that has smarts in it. So you can default to that. But yes, listen, certainly you need the infrastructure, you need the devices, right, before you can say that CBDC is great for inclusion, because today you'd argue that it's not that great, right? Especially if you're looking at poorer countries that have kind of less access to devices. You don't always have access to electricity. You don't always have access to the internet. So, that's going to be perhaps a problem. But there's many techniques to implement CBDCs. You don't need the internet. You need proximity protocols. But your original question, will it give us a flurry of innovation technically? I believe so. I certainly think that...
And are we prepared for that? I mean, I'm not talking about worldwide, but for instance, Portugal, Spain...
That's a good question. Has everyone prepared for ChatGPT? We heard that earlier today. I mean, that came around pretty quick.
Yeah.
Right? November, and then it's like, crap, let's tell everybody about ChatGPT 2 months later. So you see these technologies really advancing. They're hitting us sooner than they should. I think on the CBDC side, well, the central bank is responsible. But on the crypto asset side, well, not so responsible. So, there'll be a flurry of technical innovation, for sure. There has been. I think the role of the central bank and the regulator is to allow it to flourish safely, as opposed to not allowing it to flourish altogether.
Francisco, estamos preparados?
Francisco, are we ready for this or not? Technologically speaking, the Portuguese banking and financial system, and also the user. Let's do this step by step. Technologically, are we ready? Can this be a new business opportunity? Technologically, the Portuguese banks are investing a lot in technology, and their budget share for technology is increasing with the AI or digitalization. The budgets are increasing, this item of the budget, and this is mandatory to go down this road, but if we imagine ourselves in 10 years' time, and as it was said here today, the use cases for these solutions are being developed, and the central bank has 5 use cases being prepared with a company working on this, and CaixaBank is one of the companies working on the use case of peer-to-peer payments. But as I was saying, when this is available, what will we have? On one hand, the capacity to have regulated crypto currencies. And today, people who want to have access to digital currency don't have a regulated space. And there will be the possibility that the banks, fintechs, big techs, the different players can provide solutions. Some we don't know what they will be. We don't know where ChatGPT will take us. There are new uses coming up every day. So there's the possibility of a lot of innovation within this regulated space. Then we also have the digital currency of the central bank within the same space. So we compare what we will have within a couple of years with what we have today. There will be clients that will be happy with the solutions given by banks within the payment systems and the fiduciary system, and those who want to have some of their reserves in central bank money with coins and banknotes. So we need to be ready. There's no other choice. What about being accessible? Portuguese banks are increasingly investing in technology, and that's good. And with an iPad, I can do everything as I do in a bank branch office. But there's still people excluded. But with the digital euro, will it be accessible to all or not? I believe that a fundamental use case for the creation of the digital euro is not to integrate those who are digitally excluded. They may be included with the solutions provided today by banks. The topic of digital inclusion is a separate topic, and the pandemic helped a lot. It's probably the only positive byproduct. It increased the financial literacy of consumers, but also of those who need to provide solutions. So we will all walk down this road. Digital currencies will have their role, and there also will be new solutions on the side of private banks, fintechs, big techs, and clients will be more included digitally, but the barriers that exist to digital adoption, the fundamental ones, will not disappear with the digital currency. It's what financial literacy, and this includes and also hackers and cybersecurity. There's the issue of financial literacy, and also the capacity to access to devices and the data plans. And this is what fundamentally keeps some people away from this space, not only with the bank, public services, distribution companies outside the digital universe.
But I want your thoughts before speaking with him about the role of the bank. The role of the bank in these kind of currencies, because most of people are starting to think, why do I need the bank? I can do this direct. Do I need a mediator for this transaction or not? Is that an issue? Is that a worry? Did the banks have to change the way they work and change the aim they have right now?
You're talking about a commercial bank or the central bank?
The commercial bank.
So it depends. It depends on the model. So when CBDCs first came out, the idea was that the central bank would issue directly to Ricardo. So great, now I have money directly on my phone or on my device from the central bank. And so it's disintermediated the entire banking system. That model very quickly was unpopularized, of course, for many reasons. AML, KYC, CTF, a whole bunch of other things that need to happen. The model of the Bank of England just a couple of months ago says that the central bank will issue a CBDC through the commercial bank app. So it's what you call narrow banking. It's very narrow. So now you're just a distributor of the token. What that means is it disintermediates deposits. Instead of me having 1,000 euros in my bank account with Caixa, I now have 500 euros in this bank account and 500 CBDC tokens. So I've halved my deposit, and that changes credit creation, right, and allocation. So, that has a massive impact. So I don't think that, and of course there's different models. The Bank of Brazil has a different model altogether. The central bank will only play a wholesale role, wholesale settlement, and will not play a role in the retail side. The retail side will be tokenized deposits, which is a really interesting model because it alleviates capital concerns, right, and brings in liquidity efficiencies, which is a fairly reasonable model to consider. So it really depends. I think the summary is you're not going to see the commercial banks being disintermediated altogether, but you are going to see, I think, a reconstitution of the playing field where different roles will be done by different actors. There'll be more work to be done, right? And so there will be new participants that come into the system.
It means more different banks or mergers or
fintechs and payment service providers. So you're going to widen the base, right, of actors that can participate in distribution of the money, right? And that should create innovation, is the idea. We don't know yet, right, to Francisco's point. But the idea is that it's not going to be fully disintermediated, but there is going to be a reconstitution of the playing field.
Francisco, os bancos portugueses já...
Francisco, the Portuguese banks are realizing that they need to go against this idea that either the intermediary disappears or it will play another role. The Portuguese are in a different position. And as Ricardo said, the models can be different. But the role of banks have evolved throughout times. Doing banking services 20 years ago is different from what is done today. And the banking sector has been very concerned with capital issues, liquidity issues. The banking sector in Portugal has been very innovative. But now the issue is disintermediation, putting an end to the intermediary. The role of the bank is the role of a fiduciary to do reserve of value and remunerate it and to lend money to create broad mass with that. And as Mr. Rosalino said, in the digital euro project, all care is being given so that we preserve the balance of the system. And commercial banks will be very important in QIC, AML, and also at the fiduciary level to provide loans. And the digital euro and all the use cases that are being done today, there's no use case for loans or bank deposits. And there's indeed a difference that introduces a novelty. The central bank is not only doing wholesale, but also reaching directly the consumer. There's a difference here, but in the payments rail. And also this will generate more interoperability. So the role of banks will evolve.
Muita inovação seguramente surgirá e seria bastante, eu teria uma imagem.
And there is, if we were talking about MiCA, crypto assets, but with the two sides of the coin, there will be a lot of innovation, there will be room for commercial banks, and as Ricardo well said, and this is positive, increasingly there will be more fintechs, new players, because and years ago I love fintechs. They have led to learning by the viewpoint of banks, but also the regulator. But there will be room for those who want to be in the regulated market, and the overwhelming majority of clients will want to have their savings and value reserves in the regulated market. And it's very important to understand this. And if tomorrow one of these companies, a fintech, has a non-regulated solution, so there's space here. And those who want, as many people have money in bitcoins, and this includes these two realities: the digital euro and cryptocurrencies within the regulated space.
With yen, are these coins going to have different values because they are better as crypto as they are as a currency of all market? I mean, the value is going to depend on the way they are using as a digital coin.
Interesting. So the digital yuan we heard earlier as well has been kind of in the marketplace for 6-7 years now. There seems to be various motivations of the digital yuan. Initially, to counter big tech. And so in China, the wallet was owned by big tech, WeChat Pay and Jack Ma's payment company, I forget the name now. But the big tech owned the wallet, right? So you know, every single Chinese person had WeChat Pay, and you're moving money or red packets, you know, through WeChat. And the central bank and the commercial banks had no participation in any of that. And so the central bank created certain conditions in order to reduce the amount of payments there and to increase the amount of digital yuan that was in circulation now through the wallet. One motivation. The other motivation is to counter the American dollar as the global reserve currency. And we're seeing quite a lot of that movement today. Just this morning, Pakistan signed the agreement to say that it too would move its trade money using digital yuan. In that sense, would you suggest that the value of the digital yuan is getting stronger, certainly in the international markets? Because now more and more global trade between China, India, Brazil, South Africa, Pakistan, Iran is all going through the digital yuan. So reducing the use and the reliability on the American dollar. So in that sense, you'd suggest that perhaps the more that we get off the American dollar as our global trade reserve, and we start using these currencies, those currencies will naturally lift in value. So I think on a global level, yes, those things will have an impact. I think at a local level, you're seeing, I mean, today, you know, arguably you use 5% of your transactions, maybe 10, or cash. 90% of your money is in commercial bank money, right? So, you know, lifting or changing the physical notes to digital notes, I don't think is going to have a massive implication by themselves, unless you bring in this notion of regulated DeFi, which is really interesting, or you start to use those monies in international money flow for cross-border payments. And I'll just say, just in closing, one of the biggest motivations, certainly that we understand here in Europe from the ECB, is to get off the reliance on the American schemes, MasterCard, Visa, Amex, right? So these are payment rails that are not even ours here in Europe.
They are going to be more powerful.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to be powerful right now. With the digital currency is a way of giving more power to that kind of
No, it's
business,
a way
that
of
huge.
It's a way of balancing the power, I'd suggest to you. Whereas today, if you want you walk into any store in Europe, right, the interoperable payment is Visa, MasterCard, right? You walk anywhere in Europe and you can pay Visa, MasterCard. You can't walk everywhere in Europe and play with, different forms of currency, but those rails are prevalent across Europe. One of the motivations might be to reduce the reliance on the schemes and introduce alternative payment rails. Similarly for SWIFT, right, that manages all our international payments. So I think in summary, at a global level, these currencies have the potential to increase tremendous value at the trade, global trade. On the domestic, probably not so much domestically, but maybe on a cross-border, you'd probably see an increase of value as these new currencies are used across these cross-border corridors.
E isto até
And up to what extent this will create other business opportunities, and especially what will be the electronic payment services role? Will it balance more and not leave two or three pay the bill? It was well said by Elder Rosaline. Nowadays, we have national schemes. Portugal has the ATM, MBWay, which is a great way of paying amongst ourselves, peer-to-peer payments, sales outlet, the used cases that Digital Europe is preparing. But if I leave Portugal, the only interoperability situation cross-border, there is no European solution. We have for individuals and corporations, but they're outside the European space. And indeed, this is quite an advantage of this digital euro to create the necessary rails to the existence of an alternative, allowing any citizen to pay anywhere in the European space with the same solution. Can it help to give more value to the euro? Surely enough. And as mentioned by Ricardo, in all the races, when you're running a race, values, it's like being first. Who does better and more quickly? Their construction will make their currency suddenly be more relevant in a payment space at a worldwide level, becoming more relevant. Being closer to a standard increases the value. Very well explained by Ricardo. In a worldwide scenario, the value changes. What we'll be able to have as a solution, we'll be able to have a European payment solution. And from this point of view, we'll counterweigh this European solution, solutions that exist today that are outside the European space.
business opportunities in this area, the Euro Digital?
Well, I think, I'm not sure that the money itself is good news. I think the regulation is good news. I think the right regulation.
If you feel safe, you can create
Yeah,
more,
like
more
MiCA is
business,
really
right?
good news, right? So, the banks have been cautious about issuing stable coins. So back in January 2021, the OCC in the US released guidance saying every bank in the US that was regulated could issue a stable coin. How many did? Not one.
Yeah.
JP Morgan coin had already launched. Not one bank issued a stable coin because
Société Générale, né?
maybe in Europe,
Yeah, a few months ago.
yes, I'm saying in the US.
In the US, yeah.
In the US, they didn't because there was no regulation, it was just guidance. But here now with MiCA, of course, now it's not only guidance, it's also, as we saw, going to be embedded in regulation and legal prose and legal law, which means that now you know the boundary that you're playing in. You know what walls you're going to bounce off, and you're not going to get into trouble. So, I think the technology...
You're saying that the safety of the regulation gives you more assurance that I can do more business and
I
don't
think
have so many
I think
risks.
The technology, and it was well worded, it's a good enabler,
Right.
right? But the enabler by itself, I don't think is going to give you kind of the kind of innovation explosion we're hoping for. I think there's a layer, there's a whole bunch of layers there. There's technology, there's legal, there's regulatory, there's governance. It's a really big space. How do we govern these things? We're very used to governing individual organizations. Now we have to govern these crazy networks, right, where everyone gets to vote and everyone has a say. So, I think there's still a long way to go. I don't think it's just the technology. I think there's a layer cake that has to come together as a perfect storm.
Francisco, as
E de resto-
oportunidades de negócio.
Sim, sim. Não, só,
For business opportunity. And that's why I was saying earlier, looking at it differently if we didn't have the two sides of the same coin. On one hand, central currency that will oblige all banks, even those that don't want to explore new opportunity in crypto assets, to move towards technological evolution. They will have to integrate that solution whether they like it or not. And the MiCA regulation will allow the banks, and most large commercial banks will want to do it, to have the opportunity of innovation within the crypto assets, as I've mentioned earlier. So I foresee quite a lot of room for innovation in the next years to come, and it's innovation with multiple players and stakeholders. And just to mention that it's not only technology.
Powerful.
yeah, of course.
Nós estávamos a falar mais cedo.
We were speaking earlier in the lunch, it's a settlement.
And an exchange of everything. This is super powerful, but the regulation and the legal construct needs to be in place for it to explode.
Yeah.
Let's finish this talking, but one quick question. It's the end of the coins in my pocket, the paper in my hand to buy an ice cream.
Not for a
The
long
end.
time. Not for a long time.
Not for a long time.
Not for a long time.
Outra vez, porque o tema da digitalização.
Again, because digitalization, that is to bring people more into a digital economy, is solved, but with other concerns. These aren't the fundaments. At the beginning, I think it was Ernest Hemingway that said,
In two ways. Slowly at first, and then suddenly. So
That's what's
not for a
gonna
while,
happen.
but when it happens, you better keep a little safety deposit box, because then those will be very valuable.
Let's prepare for that.
Lovely.
Thank you. Muito obrigado aos dois.
thank you very much. Thank you for your clarification. And now, let's take a look at public services and disruption with Carolina Freitas.